It's an honor to be here. It's a great event. I really appreciate everyone who participated in putting this on. You know, it's obviously still tough that Barack Obama got reelected. I will say, though, it does make speaking of things a little bit easier because I'm still able to use the shortest joke known to man. It's only 2 words, and it is simply Joe Biden. This is a guy who advises the American people to take a double-barreled shotgun and start shooting it up into the air, thereby opening themselves up to potential negligent homicide charges. And he also thinks that jobs is a 3-letter word. Now that's funny until you think about the fact that he is a heartbeat away from the presidency. Now, since I've been in Washington, as most of you know, I am a constitutionalist. It's something that I've studied, written about, and I think is very important. And I got to tell you, I spent a lot of time listening to other people give speeches. Now, some of them are interesting, most of them are boring, all of them are lengthy. And so, I really have a newfound appreciation for the 8th Amendment because I do think some of these speeches qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. So with that in mind, I cannot guarantee or even suggest that I will give a more compelling speech than last year's speaker, Neal Boortz, but I can guarantee you I will give a shorter speech than So I really appreciate the title of this kind of speech about being at a constitutional crossroads. Taking the constitutional oath the first day. But it's amazing how many people don't really treat that oath very seriously. I didn't look around, particularly on the Democratic side when we all stood up and did it, but I think some of them had to have their fingers crossed behind their back when they were raising their right hand. And just in 4 months, I can tell you, there was a telling colloquy back and forth, and this is on the Senate side, between Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who's doing a great job, and liberal California Senator Dianne Feinstein about a bill that Feinstein had proposed. And Cruz was peppering her with questions about whether the bill was constitutional. And he was drawing analogies that she would do something similar with the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment as she was trying to do with the Second Amendment. And she reacted in disbelief. She said, "I'm not a 3rd grader, Mr. Cruz. We passed the bill. If we pass the bill and the court strikes it down, it strikes it down. I don't want to deal with this." And that just shows you that she's not even interested in upholding her basic oath. Your oath isn't to let the Supreme Court decide when you're acting constitutionally. The oath requires you to think and make a judgment about what you're doing and considering. I listen to some of these Democrats in Washington justify expanding government, and they say it in this way. They say, well, you don't need that. You don't need to drive that kind of car. You don't need that type of firearm to protect your family. It's the Bill of Rights. It is not the Bill of Needs. Liberals in Washington believe that government has unlimited authority to do what it wants, and then it decides which freedoms it thinks we need, and that that's what we should be happy with. That is not how the country was founded. Freedom for we the people is the default. We don't have to justify our freedom. Government has to justify what it does for us. And if we lose sight of that basic construct, you're going to end up moving further and further away from the principles on which the country was founded. Now, some of these principles, I think, are obviously very important. Dedication to the rule of law and a government that is accountable to we, the American people. And the more I've been up there in Washington, the more I think that the major problem in Obama's America is the fact that the bureaucracy in Washington and political officials in high places are simply not accountable for their actions to the public in the way that the Founding Fathers intended. And this lack of accountability leads to an erosion of our freedoms, bigger government without constraint, and turning our backs on the rule of law. So if you look, for example, at our attempts in the House to investigate what happened at Benghazi, I'm not not doing this because I think it's going to help us win in 2014 or 2016, because I don't think it will. I'm doing it, and my colleagues are doing it, because there is no statute of limitations on the truth. So I want to know why, when Special Operations Forces were in Tripoli, why were they ordered to stand down instead of going over to help rescue the people who were in harm's way in Benghazi? Who gave that order? We don't even know. We don't know who was in charge on this night in question. We have no idea what the President of the United States was doing. We know that upon hearing the news that Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty were killed, the President didn't convene advisors in the White House and spend time trying to figure out what was going on. He hopped on a jet and attended a fundraiser in Las Vegas. Right. We have the right to know who falsified the talking points to provide the American people with false information about who perpetrated the attack. Who came up with this whopper that it was a YouTube video rather than a coordinated attack committed by Islamic extremists. And I'd also like to know who demoted this State Department whistleblower for raising questions about this false narrative and telling people So it's not about politics, because I quite frankly don't think it's going to win us an election. It's about accountability. The same thing I would say is with the news today about the IRS admitting that they were deliberately targeting conservative groups for audits and for special tax treatment, and to take the machinery of government and make life more difficult for people who were essentially part of the political opposition. It really is a chilling admission, and I think it implicates freedom of speech, it implicates the rule of law, and it implicates whether we have correct limitations on government. If they were willing to admit this, just imagine what has actually happened. So we will hold the IRS accountable. We were already thinking about doing hearings and preparing to do hearings because they've been selectively leaking information of donors to conservative organizations in ways that they never did with liberal groups. And so we will make sure that all of this is vetted and investigated on the Oversight Committee. And I think this is just one more reason why every single IRS agent allocated under Obamacare needs to be zeroed out of the budget.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with our economy, I would also say, is a lack of accountability. And by that I mean you have bureaucracies who have been delegated authority to essentially legislate rules on all sectors of society, under Dodd-Frank, under Obamacare, and under the Environmental Protection Agency. These people who are issuing these rules don't stand for election. You can't vote them out if you don't like what they're doing, but yet they have a profound effect on people. Just the other day I was meeting with a community banker, and they are demoralized about the amount of time and effort that they have to spend dealing with red tape and compliance. They're not able to use that time, effort, and those resources to actually do things that are productive for the economy. I've had doctors tell me how they're just can't believe that they wanted to go into medical care to actually cure people, and now they're having to worry about thousands and thousands of pages of Kathleen Sebelius's regulations. It's not good. It's demoralizing for people who've worked hard to try to do well with their life, but it's also not good for the economy as a whole, because if you're having to comply with all these mindless regulations that no bureaucrat is ever going to read what you send to Washington, you're going to have less time, you're going to have less ability to actually put people to work to grow your enterprise. So this has profound consequences for the state of our economic health of our country. And I would also say recently the Senate, in their infinite wisdom, passed an internet tax. And I can only tell you that this is another example of unaccountable government, and here's why. What they basically say is, okay, if you do sales out of state, you are now as a business responsible for paying taxes to those other states. So if you're in Florida and you sell to somebody in California, you're responsible for not only paying California state tax, You're responsible for paying whatever county tax is applicable, and in California it will be applicable, as well as California city taxes. There are 9,600 different taxing jurisdictions in the United States. There are 500 different federally recognized Indian tribes. The burden of this is not going to fall on Amazon.com. They're able to hire all kind of legal team. They'll be able to deal with it great. It actually benefits Amazon.com because smaller institutions, small businesses who do business online aren't going to be able to compete with that. I talked with a fellow in Ormond Beach who told me flat out he sells custom tires for Harley Davidson. Said he will go out of business. He started with nothing, put his entire life savings into this business, now has 5 employees. They've been successful. They have a chance to do even better. And we're going to put this huge burden on them so that they have to worry about paying some county in Oregon the applicable sales tax. You're going to allow them to be audited by California and by New York. After we see what's happened with the IRS in this country, do you really want to do that? What you're doing is you're opening up people who are trying to do well in our state to taxes, regulations, and rules from other states. Guess what? If you're doing business here, you cannot vote somebody out of office in California. It is a modern day version of taxation without representation. Some say that there are small brick and mortar stores who are frustrated because when they compete with people who can sell online, if you buy out of state, you don't have to pay tax, whereas you do here. The problem with that is many of these internet companies, they are brick and mortar companies too. They have to have a place to keep their product. They have employees who deal with this stuff. So it's not as if they don't actually have a physical presence. And it's not the right thing to put unprecedented burdens on these new and creative industries. And so it's anti-growth, it's not good for our economy, it's certainly not good for consumers, and I will do my best in the House to kill it when it comes down the pike.